France went to war because of this woman's pretty privilege. So this is Madame Pompadour, who met Louis XV, King of France, when she was 23 and he was 30. They were at a costume party. She was dressed as a shepherdess. He was dressed as a tree. He was so taken by her beauty that night, supposedly, her carriage was seen outside of his private apartments. She was at that time already married and had a daughter. But this was a life-changing experience for a woman in the court. And she had been sort of born into this. Her mother had many lovers, and she had gone to private school, and it was paid. And so her mother had gotten her all the training that a beautiful young girl would need to potentially be the mistress of the king. She used that training to regale the king with stories, often stories that had featured a hero who was a god who surprisingly looked like the king. As his mistress, beauty was widely emulated at court. For example, Sèvres made a whole line of pink ceramics that were said to be the color of Madame Pompadour's lips. And in many ways, that's one of the functions of pretty privilege. It is not necessarily about sexuality. It's the fact that you have an outsized draw on people because people give you a little bit more leeway because you're attractive. There was this idea of crédit in French society, this idea that you had social capital, and she played with people like pawns. Even eventually hoping her daughter would become mistress to the King of France because she couldn't perform the duties about 5 years after she started because she'd had a number of painful miscarriages. She, though, did still remain friends with the king and decide who he might like. She is also the person who pushed Louis XV to go into the 7 Years' War, a war with England that was incredibly unpopular in France. And a lot of those people who played lip service to Madame Pompadour when she was young and beautiful also had this sort of glee at really disliking her after the 7 Years' War, because the opposite of privilege is also the idea that people assume that your beauty has gotten you something, and not the fact that she had spent decades basically advising the king.